manifestation of the colors. In all military things, the American flag is always led first. Whatever state you're in, that's the next flag that follows in line. The POW-MIA flag was formed and designed for the Vietnam Veterans flag, which is the yellow one. The Agent Orange flag is for the Vietnam Veterans of America. And because this is the 50th commemorative year of the Vietnam War, we have a 50th commemorative flag donated for all the chapters in the United States. So for those who want, they can salute.
We'll host them first.
What's that?
Host them first.
Yep. Post your colors.
All the eagles will be facing forward.
And then hand salute. 2. And then the color guard is dismissed. You can get down off there without falling.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, thank you so much. As you remove your cover, you will place it over your left shoulder with your right hand over your heart. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day that you have gifted us. Thank you for bringing us all together, and we are so very blessed. Be with our veterans where they are throughout the world, and give us the strength and wisdom to have a great meeting tonight. These are very simple things we ask in your name, Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Will you lead the pledge?
Hand salute if you want for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In a moment of silence for the POWs, MIAs, and all of our homebound veterans. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you for everybody for your patience. On behalf of the Wayne County Historical Society, I'd like to welcome you to the 2024 edition of the Arn Veterans Roundtable. This was begun a long time ago. Really, our first group was Vietnam veterans, believe it or not. Ed, a World War II veteran, captain, and Kit, his son, is here tonight. Kit, if you could be identified. Ed was very passionate about veterans' voices being heard. And as a World War II veteran, he said particularly Vietnam veterans' voices needed to be heard. And as a captain, even more, he said, and the enlisted men's voices need to be heard by the community. So that's really what started the roundtable discussions. And we've rotated them through the years, different periods, but they've always been a great educational experience for the community and everybody who participates. And this is being filmed for cable, so this will be seen in the schools and in the community too, just so you know. So these things are preserved for posterity. I'd also like to thank all of our veterans in attendance tonight. If you care to, at least be identified, and we'll by hand, I guess, raise a hand if you don't mind. But thank you for your service, and we will have some dialogue at the end where you can participate. For the question and answer part, it's going to be these 5, and then we'll engage with the crowd towards the end. Finally, I'd like to thank the Triple Nickel. They've always been great advocates of this program, and again this year, and for all they do, especially this weekend, Memorial Day weekend. You guys are, I don't know anybody more committed than the Triple Nickel, so thank you. As I said, this is a special group. I was born during the Vietnam War, and so the Vietnam veterans are the guys I grew up around. And it's always been a very special group of men to me, looking up to you for your service. So thank you guys. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to your moderator tonight, Mark Shepard.
We've been doing this long enough, I need my glasses on when I read my notes now. Again, thank you very much for coming tonight. The Vietnam War is a very interesting period of time in American history. Up to that time, it was one of the longest wars we've ever been engaged in, starting in November of 1955 and ending in 1975. So a very long period of time. The first living room war, or the TV war, you know, even as a little kid growing up, I can remember, you know, when the parents had the news on, you always saw flashes of something about the war. What we aim to do here tonight, as we have with all the other roundtables, is to get to the human aspect of the war. Many times we think of the war and we forget that the young men and women that served, there's a human side. They had dreams, they had aspirations, and those things got interrupted by their service. So that's what we want to get to tonight, is the human aspect of that war. So what we'll do is we'll have a series of questions, and with each question we will get a little closer and learn a little more about what life was like for each of the panelists. So right now I would like the panelists to just introduce themselves and the branch that you served in. It doesn't matter where we start. I keep track of who talked. It doesn't matter who starts. So
my name's Nevin Nussbaum. I grew up in Marshallville, Ohio. Went to Smithville High School. Yeah, family of 6 kids. And yeah, anything more?
no, right now you're just telling them who you are.
Okay, you're next.
Mark Seidel. United States Marine Corps. I know all of these gentlemen here, and sometime or another I've been with them on different programs, and with the 555, the Color Guard of the Vietnam Veterans of America, at the Moreland Community Historical Society, and with AMVETS, and that's enough for now.
Bob Romig. I was in the U.S. Army.
Russ Davidson. I grew up in due north of here in what's called Vermilion, and listed in the Marine Corps. Summer I graduated and was in 4 years, and now I'm in the beautiful county of Wayne and love it.
I'm Captain Ken Kitchen. Served in the United States Marine Corps in Vietnam, and later in the United States Army, Ohio National Guard, and U.S. Army Reserve.
Good. Can everybody hear them in the back? All right. Make sure you're speaking loud there, gentlemen. We have seats up front. Okay, the first question is, and some of you may have answered a little bit of this already, but where did you go to school? What year did you graduate? And what were your dreams and aspirations your senior year that you graduated?
Okay, I think, like I said earlier, I graduated from from Smithville High School when I was 17. Graduated in 1964. Dreams, I wanted to get a job, make some money, but also in the back of at that point, you start reading the newspapers. I was going to turn 18, so there was always that unknown ahead of me. So I'd make a commitment for a job, but yet you're probably going to get drafted, and kind of felt in limbo. Yeah. So that aspirations didn't go beyond that, because I figured I'd be drafted, and then who knows what would happen. You.
I attended Strongsville High School up in Cuyahoga County. I graduated in 1972. And I was, one of my goals was to be in the United States Marine Corps. And also, following that, I took advantage of the GI Bill when I was honorably discharged. I also, one of my 3 lifelong dreams was to be married and have a family, and I did that.
I grew up in Tuscarawas County, a small village of Tuscarawas, and the school there was Tuscarawas Warwick High School. No longer exists. And I was going into the military, and I knew that I was going to go through ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps.
As I said, I grew up in Vermillion, went to Vermillion Public Schools. My graduated in 1968. I got my draft notice on my birthday in February to the Army. I knew where I was going, and I didn't want to be in the Army. No offense to anybody. So when I went down to the recruiters, I'm not fond of water, so that ruled a couple out there. So the Marines talked me into going with them. So I did 4 years in the Marine Corps, and it was exciting, but I made it. I'm glad I made that choice.
I grew up in Shreve, graduated from Triway High School, University of Akron, and the Iowa Military Academy. I enlisted in the Marine Corps in February of 1965 while I was still in high school, and I was able to delay my entry until after graduation. So I left for Parris Island for boot camp 2 days after graduation. So during my senior year, as Mark asked, I knew where I was headed, and so that's basically it.
Okay, in what year did you either enlist or get drafted? And where did you process out of, and what do you remember about the day that you processed into the military? And what was your family's reaction when you either enlisted or got drafted?
I guess you mean when processed, meaning when we left Wayne County.
Yeah, when you stand up there and take the oath and then they put you on the train, or...
Yeah, it was...
I flew on a plane, but...
Oh, okay.
To a wonderful Parris Island, but I'm not sure how they transported everybody back in the, in the 60s. So wherever you went to process out of, and whatever boot camp you went to.
Well, it was in Worcester, and I think it was the Red Cross building. It was beside a hardware on Main Street, but that's all I remember there. But that's where we took our oath, and that was in June of 1967. My family's reaction, at that point it was just my mother and the 4 kids at home yet. It was kind of a resolute, well, we kind of figured it was coming. And then you get your letter in the mail, report to Cleveland for a physical, and you know, that's where you're going. Then there was a bus waiting out front. I do remember there was, for sure, one couple from Marshallville. They ran the post office. Their son was a classmate of mine, but they were there. And that was kind of surprising, but it was nice. And just a side note, the whole time I was there, every week they sent me a paper or a magazine. Totally unexpected, anyhow. And so from there, then I went down, they took us bus down to Fort Knox, is where I took my basic training. And I forget, did I hit them all? I mean, that was during a time when there was this big buildup for troops. And so it was obvious they were rushing as many through as they could. And I was in the middle of it. There wasn't any choices really. You just went in and tried to survive basic and did what they said. I'm done. Okay, good.
I enlisted in the Marine Corps in 1968, and I was honorably discharged in 1970. I took my leaving Cuyahoga County from the Cleveland area, and I believe we took buses down to Parris Island, South Carolina, and as we'd known it as Paradise Island. And it was a true wake-up call, but that was part of the training to be who we were meant to be. My mom and dad were very, very proud of me my entire Marine Corps service. And some of my brothers and sisters were not as receptive and liking it as much as mom and dad did. And that's it.
Well, when I graduated from college, as I've said, I was in the Reserve Officer Training Corps. So when we stood up to take our pledge, and we did this in graduation, stood up to take our pledge, there were all kinds of boos, catcalls. Remember, this is a different time in America at that point. All kinds of boos and catcalls, making divisive comments about what we were doing and what we were going to do. So from there, we had, I didn't have any strict time that I had to be in. In fact, I went to Fort Knox before I had even gone through infantry training. So I was a armor officer there. So.
If you don't mind me asking, when was that?
67.
67, okay. I graduated in 68. My birthday's in February, so I got my draft notice to the Army in February. I wasn't going anywhere with the Army, no offense, but I got a ride to the recruiters, and I went straight to the Marine Corps, and I told him my situation. I'd spent 2 summers working at Cedar Point, and I was asked to come back to the Silver Dollar Saloon and play the piano for a 3rd summer. And the Marine Corps said, we can work with you. We got a 120-day delay program. You go out there and you work, and then when that's over, you report to us. So that's what I did, and it worked out pretty darn good. So.
Well, as I said before, I enlisted in the Marine Corps while I was still in high school. I was 17 and left for boot camp 2 days after graduation. My parents had to sign for me to join since I was under 18, and so they didn't have a problem with that. I come from a military family. My grandfather fought in World War I. My father and my uncles in World War II, and so it was just expected that that's what I would do also, and I always wanted to be a Marine, so no problem there. And
So what year did you get in country? We've had a couple dates there, but what year did you actually step foot in Vietnam, and what was your first impression once you got there?
I arrived November 16th, which was my birthday. And I turned 21. Now, some of you may relate to this. You know, you back then you always looked to get to 21, you can drink hard liquor. Not that I really did, but that was a milestone. Well, I was halfway to Vietnam and crossed the international date line and turned 21. Big deal. So that took the wind out of that balloon. And then I landed in Cam Ranh Bay. And they lined us up and they go 1 to 10, you guys are going to go here. The next ones, you're going to go here. It didn't matter what your MOS was or anything. They ship you out. Whoever had the biggest demand or got the most killed and need replacement, that's where we went.
Bump me. Bump me.
What?
What's it? Okay. I arrived in Vietnam after we spent a little time at Okinawa, and we flew commercial airlines, landed in Da Nang, and a question to the group and all of us: how does one prepare for war? And there's a lot of different ways, and I can mention a few, being mentally, physically, spiritually, maybe sociology, like, and I'm sure there's a couple more that I just don't come across right now. But the plane landed and we got off, and being 18 years old, in great shape, going across the tarmac, several of us collapsed. It was so intense of heat, and at that time we were told it was 138 degrees. And so we recuperated, and the in-country stench was horribly. And that's good enough for now. I arrived in 1969. I also went up from Da Nang, went to up north, up north to 100, where the 101st was, and I was assigned as a platoon leader with the 101st Airborne Delta Company. And what I remember most about that was the stench also, and the fact that we were in cattle trucks, which are trucks open all sides, and riding along, and you would see all these Vietnamese, and you would think, well, shouldn't someone be in charge here? And so, but no one was, and so that's basically it.
So I flew out of, I went to Camp Pendleton in San Diego, California for training. And then I flew to Da Nang. And I got to Da Nang and doesn't seem like I was there very long. And I was in a room with some other guys and they said, we need, out in the field, we need armors. So you guys are all going to armor school, so you can be the armors. So we went to armor school, and we shipped out from there. I went to a unit battalion southwest of Da Nang, pretty far, close to whatever the border was. Cambodia, I think, but I'm not sure. And there was a camp out there, pretty good sized camp, I thought, but I haven't seen a lot of camps, so I didn't have anything to compare to. But it was pretty good size, and I was a company armor. My responsibility was to put a 50 caliber machine gun on a 5-ton truck and over the cab, and sweep the tanks and minesweepers, and we'd sweep the roads every morning. And there'd be another team coming the other direction, and we'd meet, and then we'd go back to base. And I did that for quite a while. I probably did that more than anything else when I was over there.
I flew from Okinawa to Da Nang on a C-130 aircraft, and I remember when they dropped the ramp and we walked down there, I thought I had stepped into a furnace. Like someone commented about the temperature, and it was extremely hot at that time.
Okay, now what was your job, or what was your duty while you were in country? And what was a normal day like for you during that period of time?
My job, they call it a MOS. I'm not sure what that stands for. It was an MOS of 11C, which is a 4-deuce mortar company, about that big mortars. That's what I was trained in, and I spent about 5 or 6 weeks with that mortar platoon. Now that mortar platoon would follow the battalion around to help provide cover if they needed it. After about 5 or 6 weeks, I volunteered to go out in the field as a forward observer. At that point, I still believed that we were there to stop the communists, and I wanted to be, there was no front line, but I wanted to be where the action is. I didn't want to go from hilltops, dig holes, fill sandbags, for the mortar pits and all that. That wasn't, I didn't envision that. Now, I would make a different choice looking back on it. But then I stayed with the infantry company as a ground pounder. We call them bush shakers, VC killers, whatever happened. And that was the first week of 1968, which is the beginning of Tet offensive. which was not a good time to be out in the field, but that's the way it was.
I was pretty fortunate when we were all tested, and the Marine Corps sent me to Army at Fort Belvedere. And there I was educated to be a refrigeration repairman. And I, after completion of that, then I went to the West Coast and prepared for Vietnam. When I got to Vietnam, I was doing some of that because it was very, very important to have all the troops wherever they were in support to have good frozen food and refrigerated and make ice, and in a warm climate like that was important. I was deployed to an engineer's outfit, and we would go ahead and string wire, climb poles, and support other units. And went on whatever it took for that activity. We also went out in patrols, and we had to defend our so-called complex from being overran at any time. We had these around the perimeter where they were called bunkers, and we had to man those and be prepared for any action, including mortar attacks.
I started off since I was an officer, I started off as an executive officer in Delta Company, second of the 506th, and eventually became a platoon leader. And then eventually after that and then the battalion commander selected me to be the reconnaissance platoon leader. And so what my job was to make certain my men were well taken care of, and then we searched the area around the fire base for enemy. So we were on the move all the time, and I humorously say that I slept with my radio operator for 6 months because I always had to be within reach of the radio to bring in fire. And then eventually when I was reconnaissance platoon leader, we traveled in 5 and 7 man teams looking for the same kind of thing. Sleeping on the ground for 10 days straight. I wasn't too interested in going camping when I returned.
Well, as I said, I worked with 50 caliber machine guns. I had to supply a 50 caliber machine gun for a heavily sandbagged truck. Went on over the cab, and we would use that on road sweeps. We'd have to sweep the road to a place called Liberty Bridge. Liberty Bridge would sweep the road toward us, and we would meet in the middle, and then we'd turn around and go back. We didn't get I don't remember ever being attacked while we were doing a road sweep. Of course, the minesweepers found lots of hidden stuff in the dirt road buried that they dug up, and I took some pictures of some of that stuff. But the attacks all came at night. You know, after you went to bed. Of course, we had people around the perimeter and would change those people regularly, but that's when the attacks would come. They'd throw stuff at us in the air, and they would, you know, try and get as close to you as they could. But that would usually happen in the middle of the night, you know, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. That's when that would happen.
I was trained as a communicator, and when I got to Vietnam, I was assigned to 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines. We were about 5 miles south of Da Nang, That was the outer reaches of our area at that time, and we operated to the south of there in more or less the coastal plain. A Marine battalion has 4 line companies and a headquarters and service company, and so at any time, at least 2 and maybe 3 of those line companies would be out on a combat operation. They would be assigned to sweep through a certain area, try to locate enemy and engage them. And each company that went out would have an artillery forward observer, an 81 mortar forward observer, and a forward air control team. And I was assigned to as a forward air control team leader. So that meant that any kind of air assets that the company needed while we were on the operation was my job to request it when it arrived, to control it. If it was helicopters, which most resupply, which we normally needed at least every other day of chow, water, ammunition, locate a landing zone for those choppers, mark that zone, usually throw a smoke grenade out there, and talk them into the zone. Sometimes you're out there in the middle of the zone, giving them direction to come in. They always want to land into the wind. The same thing is true if we required medevac. If we had dead or wounded and needed medevac, we request the choppers. When they arrived, I had to select the landing zone, mark the landing zone, talk the choppers in on the radio, sometimes go out, direct them into the zone. And then if we encountered enemy that we could not dislodge with our organic weapons, company weapons, or with artillery or mortars, and we needed air support, then I would request the fixed wing jets. And when they would arrive, I would contact them, they would contact me, tell me what kind of ordnance they had. And so then my task then was to mark the target that I wanted them to hit, because they're moving fast, they can't see troops on the ground, you have to direct them. So the first thing you do is get them in an orbit around you. You have to mark the target. If you can fire some kind of a smoke round on it, that's great. They can see that. If you can't, then you have to grab the smoke grenade and crawl out there and throw that thing on the target. And that is not the preferred method for marking a target. But you do what you have to do. And when the flight leader sees the target, he'll say tally ho, which means he's got it in sight. If you have him headed toward that target, pointed toward it, and not toward you, you give him clear to fire, and he'll drop his bombs, fire his rockets, or strafe with his 20 millimeters, whatever the situation requires. So when we were not required to, my team and I, when we were not busy running some kind of air support, we fought right alongside the infantrymen, the same as anyone else. So.
Now, during the time that you were there, do you remember any a lighthearted moment when you were not out, in the field? Practical jokes or anything that you might have played on a comrade there, but any lighthearted moment that you could recall?
I can't recall any. Not that we didn't. Some of the things that we would laugh at, I wouldn't even want to tell you.
Army. Okay.
But not just the Army,
Okay.
and Marines
Yeah,
too.
well, I'm not gonna tell them either.
Don't tell me.
I kind of classified this as highlights of Vietnam. And one of the things when I was eligible to take R&R, Rest and Recuperation, I was able to fly to Hawaii, and I met my mom and dad there. And that was so precious of time. And they were so, they're again proud of me because they attended my graduation down in Paris Island. And a rewarding time in Vietnam was the 4th of July. And it was our independence. And there was a lot of fireworks of ourselves in the air. And every fifth round was a tracer. But we really lit up the sky. And it's a good thing we weren't under attack of any sort that time, because we might have been low on ammunition, but we really celebrated that greatly. I also took a R&R in Vietnam as well. I didn't go to some of the places these other fellows went to, but I just took a R&R and visited some buddies of mine, and that was so important. And the last day when I left Vietnam, it was very important and precious to me.
I celebrated my birthday in Vietnam, and out in the field, my platoon, one of the sea rations was a pound cake. It came in a can, about that big around, and in that pound cake was stuck a cigar, or a cigarette. And so they all got around and wished me a happy birthday.
So I went over in June of '69 and came home in January of '71. I was ordered home because I had done I did 13 months and then 6 months, and I had asked for another 6 months, and they said, okay, but you got to go home because you've refused all your R&Rs. So I was home for 30 days, and while I was home, I got a nice letter that said, you're not going back, you're going to Camp Lejeune. So I never did get back, but while I was over there, we had somebody correct me if this is not correct, we had a pet, and I think it was a mongoose. Is that right? They have those over there?
Yeah.
What?
A civet cat.
Oh.
Long tail.
Yeah. They hate snakes? They hate snakes?
Yep, they do about anything.
Yeah, because we would catch snakes. They were around, you know, they'd visit once in a while, and we'd catch them, and we'd throw them in a ring and put this animal in there, and you'd just rip it to shreds. That was like our evening entertainment, you know. There's no dancing girls over there, so you had to do something.
Combat troops in Vietnam didn't have access to mess halls, so we existed primarily on sea rations. And as far as lighter moments, one of those was peaches and pound cake. Now, Bob mentioned pound cake, but in our sea rations, one ration contained pound cake and the other can of peaches. So when you got one of those, you saved the other until you got the other one, and then you could put those together, and that was quite a treat. Some of the other sea rations were pretty much despised. ham and lima beans was the most despised sea ration, but and you never knew what one you were going to get, because they come 12 to a box and little boxes in there, and if you turn the box upside down and open it from the bottom, you can't see the name on there. So when you pick one, you don't know what you're going to get. But anyway, peaches and pound cake was quite a treat for guys in the field.
Now, ham and lima, that's the only thing I could eat. I loved them.
Well, I can understand that with
But
you,
that was
man.
it.
But
That was it.
I would have given you all of mine.
But I would have I know I'm going out of turn, but I would have the folks at home, my mom or the kids, they'd send me that Heinz 57. Remember that? It's not that I liked Heinz 57, but it would make the food taste different. You could put that on anything, and it would just taste different. And then we started. They would send you the little cans of fruit, and that was really good. But sea rations for 15 months is not good.
Now, what was one of the scariest moments that you had? I'm sure there were probably a lot, but what one moment or couple that really sticks out in your mind while you were there?
There were a lot of moments. Our mission as a battalion, since we were attached to the 4th Division, was to be their reactionary force, which means if any unit gets in trouble, we're the ones that go. So we did, I couldn't count them, numerous combat assaults. We'd see 8 choppers coming in and we were told, okay, get on. We don't know where we're going. It could have been anywhere in that area of operation. So, I mean, we stayed out in the field continually. We didn't have a home base to occasionally come back to. We just slept on the ground the whole time, and we're continually on the move. So it was not unusual to see a lot of action. There's only twice, the whole time I was over there, I actually saw an enemy soldier, only twice. The other times you go along until you got a sniper fire. Then you know somebody's there. There were numerous times. One was if we had a chopper come in to pick up wounded. I'm still not sure why they came in. I mean, the guy was going to live, but anyhow, the chopper come in, and just as he's going to land, there was a sniper shot the pilot, and I remember laying out in front of the other guys. And I don't know why I was out there in front of them, but the pilot was killed. The helicopter started spinning. His tail hit some trees and busted off, and he was still going around, and he was getting closer and closer. I thought, that was it. I mean, if I get up and run, the sniper's gonna get me. That wasn't a real pleasant experience. When he finally ended up, the chopper ended up on its side, but its jet engines that powered it were still full throttle. And there's another time, probably the worst one was when we happened to walk into an ambush of we had 7 I think we had 17 or 18 left in our platoon, and we walked into an ambush. We just estimated at least company-size ambush, and that's all the further I'm going to talk about that.
In the Marine Corps, it was mentioned, we did 13 months over in Vietnam. And my first 24 hours were, it was one of the scariest, as to mention. We were rocketed that night, and we were in what you call hooches, and they were camping place where you had a cot and you could sleep there, and it was there again extremely hot, as I mentioned it. But we went over where to go if we were receiving incoming, and it was a bunker that was about 20-some feet tall, so it could take a direct hit. And that's everybody in the hooch would quick run out, and then you would scamper into the bunker. And it had only a kind of a opening, not much, a little bigger than maybe the stove there. And we were being rocketed, and so we were going to the bunker. And as I mentioned, it was very, very hot, and I got a foot or so into the bunker, and everybody's trying to get in there because these guys, some of the guys been there longer than us, and they knew that. And there was a little bit of a problem, not much, but a little bit of a problem. I got into it and started going into it, and I woke up, and guys were climbing over me, and we all got in there. But that's kind of a strange thing, to get partway in there and doing what we were told to do and then wake up. And the other thing about it, I was naked. So they just still climbed over me. Farther beyond that, when we were being overran, it was a time that you really depended on your buddy. And I didn't have any ammunition, and my buddy from Texas, I asked him, and he gave me a magazine. And it's something to be very proud of, that he shared that. He didn't have to, but he did. And after I was out of the service, I went to see him in Amarillo, Texas, and his place said it was still government property of the U.S. government. So that's enough on my stories now.
As far as being frightened, yes, one time, well, more than one time, but one time this happened. I was with a team of 7 people, and we had created a perimeter that night, and we heard them moving all around that perimeter that night. And the next morning, we got up, and as a lieutenant, this is why you get the big money. I had to stand up and say, "Follow me." And so when I stood up and said, "Follow me," the world exploded. And I had this notebook in my pocket, and that bullet went through and pierced that notebook, and another went through and pierced my boonie hat. Neither of those hit me, but I can tell you that when I crawled over and started talking on the radio to bring in artillery, I was shaking. And that was the most frightening experience for me.
There was a place when we take trips from one base camp to another base camp. There was a place we would stop. It was called Liberty Bridge. It was over a creek. There was a creek that went through it, and there was a small bridge that went over it. And they called it, I think the creek, they named it Liberty, and so that was Liberty Bridge. And I had to spend the night there, and of course, as my luck would have it, we got shelled that night. My job was at an open bunker. There was a 50 caliber machine gun, and I had brought that with me, and so that was my weapon. That's what I was firing on during this altercation. I was a corporal. A sergeant came in my foxhole and ordered me off my weapon, which I refused several times. He finally pushed me off my weapon and started firing. He didn't know how to fire a 50 caliber machine gun. You can't hold the trigger down and just let it keep firing. You'll fuse around in the barrel. The barrel will get so hot, round will fuse in there. And that's what he was doing, and that's what I was telling him not to do. And he had to shut the F up, was the only thing he ever said to me when he was in that hole. That's the only thing he said to me. So at some point I pointed a 45 at him and said, "Get off my gun." And I had another barrel, and I put the other barrel in, and he threatened to take over again, and I said, "No, you're not gonna ruin my only other barrel for this 50 cal. I'm not going back to my commanding officer and say I stood there and watched you ruin 2 barrels." So he took off running, and afterwards he come found me, and he said, "The colonel wants to see you." So we had to go in and see the colonel. The colonel asked me what happened. I told him, and he looked at the sergeant and he said, "Go tell your lieutenant I want to see him in 10 minutes. Now get out of here." So I don't know whatever happened to him, because I left the next day. I was glad to get out of there. Never had any urge to look him up. So, but that was a harrowing experience.
In 13 months of combat, there are numerous times when one feels apprehensive. Mark used the word scared, scariest, but I recall a particular operation where normally when you set up at night, the company platoons set up in a 360-degree perimeter, and the headquarters group is in the center, and so you have somebody around there. But this particular operation, our platoons were all set on line along a river as a blocking force, and so the headquarters group was set up on a little spit of land with a grass hooch on there and rice paddies all around. And there were 18 of us, and at that time, because we carry these heavy radios, our primary weapon was just a .45 pistol. And when they issued you a .45 and 3 magazines with 7 rounds apiece, so you had 21 rounds of ammo. Well, I had 2 other members of my team, and so we were put on this one corner of the position there, and myself and one of the other team members was a black Marine. We're dug into a hole here, and the other one was dug in over about 20 meters to that side of us. And in Vietnam, at night, when there's no stars or moon out, it is dark. There's no ambient light from the city shining, so you can't see your hand in front of your face sometimes. So that's the nights that the enemy picks to hit you. So just about midnight, mortars started coming in, and rifle and machine gun fire, and so I looked at my other team member here. His name was Lee, and he was you could see he was obviously really scared, and he said to me, he said, "Ken, if they come across there, we're just a bunch of dead," something I can't repeat. And I said, "Well, Lee, just don't do anything until I do." Well, as it was, one VC soldier did approach our hole, and I had to render him combat ineffective. And so, like I say, all we had was these pistols and 21 rounds of ammunition. And we threw some grenades, and we could hear the enemy being hit by those, but they never could pinpoint our position, which was why you don't indiscriminately open fire, because then they can zero in on your position. But so we had one troop wounded, and we had to request a medevac, and it was a pretty serious wound, so it was emergency medevac. And so when the chopper arrived, the only place he could come down was in a rice paddy that was just to this side of us. It was real small rice paddy, and so I had to go out there and with 2 flashlight wands and direct him into that zone. And I remember he had to come down almost right on top of me, and I thought to myself, I'm going to be the cause of a helicopter crash here, and it's going to be right on top of me. But we were able to get him in there without any trouble and get our casualty out. And so then the story goes on. Probably several months later, it was in December actually, and they came around and they said, "How'd you like to go to Tokyo for R&R?" And I said, "Well, that would be okay, I guess." I'd been there since March, and I hadn't been on any R&R. So, and I said, I didn't even think about it. I hadn't saved any money. I sent all my money home. And my other team member, Lee, was sitting over there listening to this. And he got into his gear over there, and he came over and he handed me $500, and he said, "You saved my life. Take this and go on R&R." So if you think guys don't get close and appreciate each other in combat, you'd be wrong. They do. So that's something I'll never forget.
Okay, when, in what year did you leave Vietnam? And then what were your thoughts as you were leaving?
I left in February 9th of 1969. The normal tour was 1 year. And I extended 3 months. At that point, I was determined, because of all the negative stuff I heard about back home. We call it going back to the world, is how we referred to it. But all the negative stuff, the hippies and the protests we would hear or read about in the few newspapers that we get. And I wanted to get back to the world because I wouldn't have to get shot at anymore. But on the other hand, I didn't really care. So I extended 3 months, and if you had 3 months or less when you got back, they'd let you out of the Army. So that was a good incentive. I'd have never made it going back into a regular stateside Army. They'd have busted me down to 0. I wasn't ready to listen to anything. And I wasn't real keen on my country. My country betrayed me, especially Lyndon Johnson, when he played all that stopping the blockade. It was a Haiphong Harbor that kept aid from going into the north. He pulled that back as, and I understand as a trying to get a resolution for the war. I think it had a lot to do with his reelection. But I was sure at that point my commander-in-chief was not looking out for his troops. I was convinced of that. I was on my own as well as my buddies. I had to get out of there and look after my neck as well as my buddies, because there wasn't anybody back home going to do it. So, yeah, when I got back home, one of the first phone calls I made was to the Australian embassy. I wanted to get out because my country didn't take care of me. Because I had to stand there and watch one of my buddies on this hill that we had just taken and fought for. He was all packed. He was going home. His year was up. And he was ready to get on a chopper and out of there. That was the best time for a vet. Like I said, we were on a hill, and I remember him kind of hooched down on this little bit on the side of the hill, and the chopper come in. I don't know why he came in that. He could have landed on top of the hill, but he came in kind of the side. And my buddy jumped up to get in and lost his head. Those kind of incidents, and there was others that I lost. You get so angry, and you're willing to take it out on anything. Because my country left me down. So I went back just to get out of the shooting. I remember getting on the plane. I don't know what airport we were at. Most of the time I didn't know where we were. I remember getting on a plane and turning around and flipping Vietnam off with both hands and saying a few nice things. But I remember going into the plane. My seat was over the wing, and it was quiet. And I remember looking out the window and saying to myself, what just happened? You know, for over a year of fighting, what just happened? It was like, it was a nightmare. And that's the mindset I was in at the time. I didn't care. I didn't have any feeling anymore at that point. It was gone. Anyhow.
He's what buddies are for.
Yep.
As I mentioned before, one of the highlights was when I left with the airport where the airplane was taking off, and it was really scary because that was a scary moment, even though it was a great time. In Vietnam, I'm like a lot of these guys. I didn't appreciate being shot at, and I called it not our country, but the country, and it was a question of betrayal and support. This may not have a lot to do with it, but when a lot of my stuff got blown up and I didn't get paid for 6 months. And that's just the way it was, but we didn't need a lot of money over there anyway, so it was okay. And back to the other about being scared, I thought my heart was gonna burst out of my body. And it just pounded so hard that I never felt it ever again. And that's enough.
Well, excuse me, about leaving, I was excited. We were married at the time, and I was going to see my wife. So that was high for me.
I had been over there 13 months and I had asked for a second extension, and they said, well, we got to send you home. No, I was there for 19 months. I'm sorry. 19 months without a break, and they said, we got to send you home. We'll grant your extension, but you got to go home for 30 days. So while I was home for 30 days, I got a nice letter saying, we canceled your approved extension. Report to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. So you report to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, you know, it is what it is. So I went down there, and I had to, Lieutenant told me I had to go see the CO, and went into his office, and he said, how would you like to be a company mail clerk? I'm game for just about anything, so I said, okay, what do I have to do? Where's the other mail clerk? He's in the brig. So there's a lot of things going through my head at this point. He said, well, we caught him with bags of mail in the trunk of his personal car. That's a no-no. Don't ever do that. So I never did that. And everything went pretty well with that. And then he called me in, and after several months, and he said, we need a career planner. You want to be the career planner and a mail clerk? I'm a corporal. What am I going to say to a colonel? Okay. So they sent me through re-enlistment training, and so I did both of those while I was at Camp Lejeune, and the re-enlistment was more fun than the mail clerk. The mail clerk was kind of boring, actually, but with the re-enlistment, I was on a team that we would go into a Jacksonville school and put on a demonstration. So that made that a lot more enjoyable than sorting mail.
I guess the question was, how did you feel when you left? I sort of forgot. Anyway, I felt sad to be leaving some of the guys there because of the bonding with them. One thing about during that time, you know, in World War II and World War I and that, units went to war as a unit and they came back as a unit. But in Vietnam, initially the units went over there, and then individuals rotated home after their tour, and then others went over on the individual draft. So a lot of times you would be out on an operation, and you would come back to battalion headquarters, and you'd say, "Where's so-and-so?" And they'd say, "Well, you rotated home." So you lost touch with those guys. But the guys that were still there, you feel a little bit guilty about leaving and leaving those guys there. But Anyway, I got to tell another story. This is on the lighthearted thing, back to the lighthearted question. I call it my beer story. I grew up in Shreve, Ohio. My family, nobody drank in the family. My father, grandfather, mother, nobody. So I didn't care anything about beer. So after I'd been in Vietnam, probably for about 6 months, most of that time on operations, and had nothing cold to drink. And so we got the word that they were going to chopper beer out to the field to us. And so I thought, well, I don't want any beer, but there'll be some sodas there. Nope, nothing but Bud Light, I think it was. So I said, I don't care if it's kerosene, if it's cold, I'm gonna get some. So I went and got my 2 cans of beer, went over, leaned up against the palm tree, took off my helmet, popped the top on one of those things and went like that. Oh boy, was that nice, that cold stuff going down your throat. And I popped the top on the other one and did the same thing. And then I tried to stand up. That cured me of ever wanting to be a drinker after that.
Okay, so we're going to get down to some of our final questions. What was it like, and if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. What was it like for you returning stateside?
Oh, boy. I remember getting off the plane. We landed in Seattle. And there, even though I guess in part of me didn't expect anything like somebody there to welcome you. I mean, my family wasn't going to be there because they had moved to Florida when I was in basic. You just kind of wondered what would happen when you land. And so we landed and looked out the window, and it was at night. And there was nothing there, and okay. Then I remember getting off the plane with my duffel bag. I remember walking into the terminal, and there's this lady sitting there in her seat. She had the paper up. She was reading the paper, and she had a cigarette hanging out of her mouth, which, you know, at that point you could smoke anywhere, I guess. And I remember walking in through those few chairs into the terminal, and it hit me. That was my welcome home. Again, I didn't expect a lot, but it was like, oh man. But I was on the ground and I wasn't getting shot at. Then they bussed us to, what was it up in there?
Pendleton? No. Which country?
Country? No! Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay,
That's it. And they bussed us to Fort Lewis, Washington, where since I got out early, since I extended, then we processed out where, guys are taking their duffel bags where they had their old combat boots or whatever, and they just throw them in the corner. They had barracks, but they didn't have any beds in there. I remember not sleeping for 4 days. I was tired, but like a deer in the headlight. It was like, yeah, but I'm going back. And so then I flew out of there. Now I did have my uniform on, and we're kind of looking around for anybody. Maybe it was because it was night, looking for anybody that was going to come up and give us a hard time, and that didn't happen. But it did to some of my buddies. And at that point, if you do it to them, you did it to me, kind of thing. But it was, didn't have any incident. Got on the plane, ended up down in Florida where my mother and brothers and sisters were. And you kind of knew, in the back of my mind is, don't talk about Vietnam. That was not popular, obviously. Just shut up. Don't wear any hats or any insignias that suggested that you were in the military. It was just an unwritten thing. And then you kind of melt back into society. Australia kind of fell through. I started running out of money. But you just kind of knew you melded back into society. You know, you need a job, so I got a job, started making a little bit of money. And you just learn to shut up. Don't say anything. I had one cousin, shortly after I came back, I know we were just shooting the breeze, and you know, he said, "Hey, how you been? Where you been? Blah, blah, blah." I was in Vietnam. Where's that? I said, we're fighting a war over there. Really? Okay, this is a cousin that's got some problems. But it's little things like that that happen of, where you been? I was fighting a war, trying to save my life. With your mindset in certain locations, people can be so barbaric. And at the time and place those things happen, that was normal. It's just bizarre. It's another world, but then it was war. But I had to kind of put that, I had to go on with my life. And somebody mentioned that the World War II guys coming home on the boats took a while. So they got to talking, and that was kind of a debriefing. It was really important. That was a debriefing for them, and that's good. I'm glad that happened. But in Vietnam, you go over, it takes 12 or whatever hours to go. You go over by yourself, you get on the plane to flip them off, get on the plane and come back. And that's a problem. And so, you know, until 1995, I didn't say or do anything, but at some point I had to get help because it came back. My counselor told me it was like you put all your memories into shoe boxes. Maybe put them in the closet and just pretend they're not there. But at that point, well, I had just visited the wall in Washington, D.C. And at that point, I picked up that shoebox with memories. And I dropped it. It was all over the floor. I didn't know what to pick up. I didn't know what to do with it. I'm stopping.
My receptive was as lousy like most everybody else. If you were in Vietnam and in Vietnam, you do suffer. Some are with medication, some is with speaking, but you suffer. This past year, I saw my mental health doctor 5 times. We're survivors. I can tell you a story upon coming back to the States. A friend of mine punched somebody out, and he got in trouble for assaulting, and so the police said, well, you're going to jail. And he said, well, how come? What's up, He said, well, you punched that guy. And he said, yeah, he spit on me. So those type of things play hard on us as we returned. And sometimes even close friends or family turn against you, believe it or not. And any of your friends, they don't like them at all. If they come to visit, they not accepted. That's enough.
My story is a little lighter than these two, but I can distinctly remember we landed in Seattle, Tacoma, Washington. I got out of the plane, went up to the counter, and the woman said to me, well, I'm sorry, sir, we have no more standby seats. And I said, are you kidding me? I'm going to pay first class. I pulled out of my pocket this wad of money, and I started counting down 20s until she said, okay, that's enough. I went out, got on that plane, flew home, met my wife.
That's pretty good. As I think I mentioned, I went home in January of '71. I was supposed to be home on leave and go back to country. But while I was home, I got a change of orders to report to Camp Lejeune. For me, it was just a change in duty station, You go where you're told to go and you do what you're told to do. I got to Camp Lejeune and they said, we need a recruiter. We want to send you to recruiter school. You okay with that? Talking to a colonel. I'm not going to argue with a colonel. I'm a corporal. So I said, sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to go to recruiter school. So they sent me to recruiter school, and I was a company recruiter. And I did that for quite a while, almost a year. And then the CO called me in again, and he said, we need a battalion mail clerk. You interested in that also? And I said, well, what happened to the last clerk? He's in the brig. Does that make any difference? No, sir. So I became a battalion mail clerk, and that's what I did until my 4 years was up, and I took my discharge, which he was not very happy. Being a company re-enlistment person and not re-enlisting. That did not go over too well with him, but it's a free country. He's entitled to his opinion. My opinion was it's time to go home.
I came home earlier than these guys. I was there in '66 and '67. Came home in April of '67, and I think that was before the KGB had stirred up the college lunatics, and so I didn't encounter any of this problem with our citizens. Plus, I was coming home to Shreve, Ohio. You know, there's no more military town in the country than Shreve, Ohio. So, but I did go with my family out to the Shreve Sportsman's Club to a fish fry, and there was a girl there who I'd been in school with, and somehow the conversation came around to, I just came back from Vietnam, and she said, "Were you fighting there?" And I said, "Well, yes, now and then." So I guess the beyond that, you know, none of us talked very much about the war. It was very unpopular to be in the military in those days after Vietnam. And so we were busy with our careers and raising our families. And so we didn't talk about it very much, and the people didn't want to hear about it very much either. But when I started talking about it was after we sent our guys to Iraq, and they did what they were supposed to do over there, and then they were going to pull them all out of there and let it and just let it go back to what it was, which is exactly what they did after Vietnam. Just abandoned the South Vietnamese and negated all our sacrifices there. So they were going to do it again, and I said to my wife, you know, we can't let that happen. Somebody has got to tell the American people what is going on. And otherwise, I said, if you keep doing that, who's going to go fight for you in the future? And so we started the speaking tour. I've been doing this for, I think, close to 15 years now. We speak anywhere people will invite us. I know I was asked to come here next month and talk. And you know, we talk about, if we talk about Vietnam, we talk about military history, we talk about U.S. history. If it's Memorial Day or Veterans Day, the speech is geared toward that. But anyway, that's why I started talking about it. And you know, you may have noticed that our politicians did exactly the same thing in Afghanistan that they did in Vietnam here recently. So somebody has got to tell the American people what's going on, and so that's our way to continue to serve our country.
Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen.
I went back to Vietnam in 2018. And that country is amazing. It's obviously communist, but that country, you would not see any different between I mean, if you didn't talk to anyone, you would not see anything different there than what you would see here in a city.
Okay, I truly thank you for being on the panel. It has been an honor to be up here with you. We've gone rather long. And here again, if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. But with Memorial Day coming up, is there somebody that you would like to remember either from, from your time in Vietnam on Memorial Day.
Yeah, Billy Sapp. His last name is S-A-P-P. He's from Georgia. He was in that ambush that I talked about earlier. He was our point man for quite a while. He was kind of a short guy, kind of balding already, and he was about my age. He always had a smile on his face, always. But he had the best eyes. Like that's why he was our point man. He was really sharp. And we lost him. He was the first one on that ambush when they opened up with a automatic. And of course, when that happens, everybody hits the deck. I remember him rolling down the hill, and he landed about 2 feet from my feet. And he still had a smile on his face. And I remember him.
I would say, I truly hope, we had mentioned some things that perhaps we never mentioned before, and I'd hope that this audience would not think anything lesser of us. If you ever have a chance to see the traveling wall, it's a great thing, and also the real one in Washington, D.C. I have 6 members on the wall that I trained with. And it's meaningful and important, and it just it's the way it was.
Stanley Deal. He was a squad leader in my platoon, and we were infantry, obviously. And so after I had left that platoon, he decided to transfer to artillery, to be a 81 millimeter member. And he transferred on the Fire Base Ripcord, which is where we were, Fire Base Ripcord, and he was killed there, thinking that it was a safer place to be than out in the field.
I remember going over with a bunch of individuals. I didn't know anybody on the plane because there was nobody else from Vermilion. There was nobody else from Erie County. They were just guys from all over Ohio that were there, and we're going to the same place. I remember the first guy I met over there, when I got to my destination, he asked me where I'm from. I said, I'm from Ohio. He says, I'm from Ohio. And I said, where are you from? He says, Toledo. Where are you from? I said, Vermilion. He goes, well, you probably never heard of Tony Pacos. And I said, I know people in Alabama that know Tony Pacos. Who are you kidding? Yeah, I know Tony Pacos. So we were buddies. We kept in touch even after we got home and even after we got discharged. But I had a letter come back undeliverable. I'm on the internet. I can't find him. Never did find him. Don't know what happened to him, but I appreciate the time I had with him and served with him. He was a great guy.
Michael Monahan, Bruce Bennett, and Miles Herring. We lost Mike Monahan, was one of my team members, in an ambush on a trail west of Quezon, up close to the Laotian border, part of what would be known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And Bruce Bennett was seriously wounded up there and medevaced, and nobody knows what has happened to Bruce. We have been unable to contact him. And Miles Herring sustained a leg wound there, which used to be called $1 million wound, you know, but a few years ago, my wife and I went to Mobile, Alabama to visit Miles, and I found out that he'd walked around all his life feeling like he had a nail stuck in the bottom of his foot because of nerve damage from that wound. So I remember those guys.
Gentlemen, thank you again. You succeeded in what we wanted to do, which was to bring the human side to the war. And you did it masterfully, you did it beautifully, and I thank you very much. If you would like to do some closing comments, we can do that.
Okay, I'll start.
You start. 'Cause
Yeah, I have a bunch of them. I go through it pretty quick. The Marine Corps shaped my life, and it's who I am, what I have done and yet to do. And I do all of this with family support. I couldn't do it without that. I am the president of the Vietnam Veterans of America for almost 3.5 years, and very proud of that. I have a great cabinet, and that's what helps me survive and go on. I also belong to 7 different military organizations, and kind of in an order, the Marine Corps League, and we support and do for the Toys for Tots, the Vietnam Veterans of America, the 555 Honor Detachment, AMVETS, American Legion, the DAV, 105th OBI, that's Ohio Volunteer Infantry. And they have a program coming up on the 28th right here again. And President Grant will be speaking. I'd much rather be in that uniform than really be up here, but we did it. I wanted to say that I am very grateful that I am a free American veteran. I keep busy. We farm in Wayne County and Holmes County. And a question that youngsters would ask, would you do it again? And most of the veterans say, yes, they would. And I would say I would do it a lot smarter. I believe that my drill instructor would be very proud of me. And I promote the buddy system and try to prevent suicides. We have a silent watch right here downtown Worcester, our Vietnam veterans, and I have enrolled to be on the Holmes Wayne Honor bus as a guardian come September. Through all of this military, it took me 30 years before I was able to hunt. That's a long time. And I continued my education, graduate from Ohio State University of ATI, and my wife as well. And I spent 27 years on the Fredericksburg Volunteer Fire Department and being an EMT. And that's where you learn about medicine and medical stuff in the back of that squad. I'm done. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you for your patience. I'm done.
Thank you.
I'm done. I'm ready to go home.
Thank you all. God bless. Have a good night.